Hello and welcome back my fellow friends to a new Kerbin Space Program video and a new SSTO video. And as I promised you guys in the last week's episode, we're gonna take the ugly bird SSTO that we've got here with tiny modifications, more on that in just a second, and throw it into Planetary. So we're once again rolling down the runway in order to take off, and we're gonna take off in a very ugly fashion, like the name suggests, ugly bird SSTO. And then we are going to head towards the ocean and make a nice close inspection of the water, as you can see here, almost touching it with our tail. Well, with our two tails that are underneath. Anyways, that's a detail. So onto the flight profile. First things first, we are accelerating at around sea level, just horizontally, in order to gain some speed for the Rapier engines. And that means until we hit more or less 400 meters per second, we're going to go in a straight line. After 400 meters per second, we are going to pitch up to the 15 to 20 degree angle mark. After that, we're just going to continue straight up on this angle to accelerate towards space, because that's where we're going. At around the 20 kilometer mark, we're going to engage the nuclear engines, which are action group number 2, and then going to pull up a bit harder until the, well, actually before that, I totally forgot that. We're going to wait until the Rapiers run completely out of air, and then we're going to switch to closed cycle mode, pulling up, raising our apex above the Kerbin line, or the Kerbin equivalent, I guess Kerbin line? Kerbin line, there you go. Kerbin line. And then going to coast to apex, which we are doing right now. Then burning again at apex to raise our power axis and circularize our orbit. Speaking of orbit, after one nice celebration orbit, we're going to dump most of our oxidizer, actually half of the remaining oxidizer to be more precise, since at this point in the mission we're not going to use any oxidizer except for a few situations, landing and takeoff at our destination. Speaking of the destination, I guess you know it because I usually put it in the title to get more views on the videos, yay, though they really don't get that many views anyways. So I guess that doesn't even make sense to put it in. Anyways, that's not important. I'm totally getting off topic here. So after a nice first orbit raising maneuver and what was it? Yeah, orbit raising maneuver. We're gonna go for the I think third. I'm not quite sure honestly. Second or third orbit raising maneuver, which will actually be our ejection burn from the sphere of influence of Kerbin. I obviously planned a nice maneuver node, and we're obviously launching at a nice how's it called, transfer window, but we couldn't quite get an encounter. But you saw there the two close encounter marks, the grey markers, were almost, well, if it looked like they were exactly on top of each other, but that's just a detail. So we're just gonna head into interplanetary space, leaving Kerbin behind for the next couple of years. I think 2-ish years. Anyways, that's a detail, not important. Then we're going to time warp to interplanetary space and do our small correction burn, only 50 meters per second. And you can see the Delta V readout on the lower left panel. I've no clue because my preview window here during the post commentary phase is, well, a bit too small. I think that it should be around 3,000 something 100 meters per second. So time warping to Duna somehow, even though you saw already there after the correction burn that our periapsis was above the surface of Duna, doing absolutely nothing. The periapsis decided to go into Duna. So we did a small radial outburn right at the edge of the sphere of influence of Duna. After that, we're gonna head straight down to the I wanted to say surface, no, atmosphere of Duna, and start our aero braking. So the aero braking thing, or why I'm actually going to Duna, well, obviously you know we're not going to Duna but rather to Ike, but the actual very interesting thing when building Duna SSTOs, and for that matter obviously Ike SSTOs, we do have Duna as a very useful candidate for utilizing its gravity, well, no, atmosphere to slow down, because at the end of the day we're actually a space plane, SSTO, space plane, you can call it whatever you like, or the ugly bird. You know, that was uncalled for. So we're going to use obviously the atmosphere, even though it is a very thin atmosphere of Duna, to try to slow down and aero brake around Duna in order to save this Delta V. Although I'm going to be honest, the Delta V requirements for a chemical capture, well, not, chemical capture? I think, yeah. Anyways, just a capture while with use by engine power would not be that much either way. I think we're blading off like 400-ish, I guess, meters per second to get a capture burn, well, to get capture into Duna. But still, at the end of the day, most SSTO missions, I guess all SSTO missions are at the end of the day. I think I actually touched upon this in the previous video. Anyways, most SSTO missions really do strike back, well, aim for efficiency using those small gimmicks: gravity assist, aero captures, aero brake. Well, aero captures is a subform of aero braking. Using all sorts of small, like those techniques in order to save some Delta V that you don't have to lug around, because at the end of the day, an SSTO brings all the fuel from the surface of Kerbin to wherever it goes and back, if you're trying to get back to base. And we obviously are gonna have back, so that's why we are already approaching our destination, relatively speaking, I guess, since we are now in a high Ike orbit. And we're around the middle of the video. Not quite yet, but you get the point, right? Since we're gonna head home after that as well. So now we are in a very nice position here, having Ike on the one side and Duna on the other side. We're gonna slow down into a low Ike orbit and, well, start searching for a nice landing position. And now I'm gonna be a bit, small spoilery here. I actually wanted to land at the, like, so that so that Duna is more or less on the horizon of Ike, something similar to what we did on the Mun with Luna City, if you can remember those videos. Speaking of those videos, if you have not seen the Duna City video, I really suggest you having a look at it. It is one of my personal favorite videos, just because it was a lot of effort and I really enjoy how it came out with just the city itself. So that's where I wanted to land, but after getting into a low Ike orbit, kind of low Ike orbit as in this altitude-ish, the game started to behave like I have no clue, as if this is a 1000 parts craft. Obviously the footage is sped forward, even though it is at 4 times regular speed, mind you. It's still looking very, well, not quite real time, but quite close to real time, or at least it feels for me right now in the post commentary that is quite close to a regular real time mission. For example, actually like a 2 times ish, I guess, moon landing type of mission. But in real time, I was just so annoyed by the fact that the game just started to take ages to just do small things. And at the end of the day, even though this is a Mark 3-ish type of SSTO, it does not have that many parts, and we had no issues whatsoever taking off from Kerbin and things like that. So I'm really confused why the game decided to be like that on the during the landing on Ike. So that was a bit annoying, and this will also be a reason we'll see that we won't do a lot of surface activity, because that was just too painful to play through. And yes, I did restart my computer, and yes, I obviously restarted, closed KSP, reopened everything and things like that, and there was nothing working in the background, so yeah, I have no clue. And I had no issues whatsoever doing things like that on any other body so far, or at least not in that in that amount. I mean, the frame rate dropped so significantly. Even Lathe was better, and there were 3 different crafts, each pretty much 2/3 the size of this one. Anyways, on the landing, I actually am a bit late to that. We sadly crashed one of those 3, now there are 4 things that we have sticking around at the rear of the craft for aerodynamic stability during re-entry. Yeah, actually for Kerbin re-entry, since that's the biggest issue, stability issue with all SSTOs. So we sadly broke one of them, which will be a bit of a hindrance, I guess, in terms of aerodynamic since it won't be symmetrical anymore, but that's just a detail. Now onto the takeoff from Ike. Here we're using a bit of the oxidizer, like I said, and we still have a lot of oxidizer, because this time around, small changes, like I said in the very beginning of the video. One of the changes is we've got more RCS power, and we have RCS, so actually some RCS fuel, since I drained that one for the test mission to the moon. And now we're just heading off into, well, escaping the sphere of influence of Ike, and going into a highly eccentric, and actually a bit inclined, well, and sadly a bit inclined orbit around Duna. After some time warp, not glitches, but time warp weirdness, we are at the apoapsis around Duna, so we're a tiny bit late on the transfer window, but that's not a big deal. We're just doing here a nice transfer burn to Kerbin now. Mind you, we are now in interplanetary space, because we just literally ejected straight out from Duna into interplanetary space, because, well, somehow the maneuver node didn't want to get me an encounter, but I decided to show the exit of Duna after showing the burn, just because of it looks a bit more cinematic, I guess. I mean, so we're leaving now Duna, and we're entering the sphere of influence of Kerbin. Boy, oh boy. Now onto the entry, well, actually re-entry into the atmosphere of Kerbin and the capture around Kerbin. I was a bit scared, I guess. Well, I wouldn't say scared. I was very careful with selecting the altitude at which I'm going to aero brake. At the end of the day, it was a bit too low, so I'm going to flip around and do some engine power, because otherwise we would fly back into interplanetary space, and with 800-ish meters per second, that's more than enough. I actually thought at this point in time, maybe we should do a nice small flyby of the moon or Minmus or something like that, because at the end of the day, that would be a pretty free Minmus mission. Anyhow, I decided not to opt for this, and I skipped forward to a small orbit racing maneuver that you saw just there. We were at a 200-ish kilometer-ish apoapsis. We race our periapsis above the atmosphere, and then reduced our apoapsis when we were at the periapsis, down moving a bit forward, so that we can start our landing burn, aka our burn to re-enter the atmosphere again, and get down and land at the KSC. Reason being why we skipped forward so much is, well, there were like 5, 6-ish aero braking passes in between, and by the way, we actually got a unintentional mun assist, which raised our periapsis above the sphere above the atmosphere, and we had to do another deceleration burn. I decided not to show that, because honestly, even at 4 times regular speed, that would have been 8 minutes of straight aero braking. So I guess we can see now the last descent from low Kerbin orbit. Well, the first capture aero brake, I guess. Capture brake, and the last aero brake, last re-entry into the atmosphere. We're gonna land right now. Other small things for changes compared to the first version. Actually, there are almost none, except that I actually don't know. Did we have parachutes in the first version? Now we have some parachutes. That's for sure. Then the RCS, I already noted that one. And honestly speaking, that was pretty much it. I haven't changed it all too much. As for the aero braking, we are very stable, and then I decided it was a bit too aggressive with, well, aero braking with braking, since we obviously were overshooting it. But after one beautiful flip, we are back in control. So this actually shows, I was honestly surprised that after the first flip, or after the flip actually, automatically, I almost did nothing. I was a bit too late activating the SAS for that matter. As a matter of fact, we actually were again in a pretty solid position, so we can all say and agree that this was a planned flip to slow down and turn around faster in order to not fly 100 kilometers, I guess, because right now we are just around 100 kilometers away from the KSC, and If we were to fly further back, it would be more than 100 kilometers. Anyways, details. Now we're turning around, igniting the air breathing mode engines and flying back. This time, however, not to the KSP itself, but to the island runway, because these 30 kilometers, well, why not land at the island runway since we're already at a pretty solid approach towards it. So, other things, noteworthy things, we still have had, even though we did so many correction burns and engine power, we still have some fuel left, which is quite good. But anyways, now we are actually finishing the mission, coming in to the runway, popping out our drogue chute to slow down from 200 meters per second down to just over 60 meters per second, and then coming down to a very nice and slowly gliding touchdown on the island runway, igniting. Now, pressing the brakes and getting to a stop, this time without flipping around, though I guess I should reduce the braking force on the brakes even further. And on this note, we have landed at the runway, albeit the island runway, and we have a successful SSTO to Icon back mission. So I hope you've enjoyed it, and until next time, Spaceship signing out.